It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-pointer attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, everyone. This is Locked On Canadiens. Welcome to episode 413, and we are brought to you by Locked On NHL. Anytime you want to know anything that's going on around the league, Locked On NHL is 5 days a week, just like we are, and they cover all the major stories in the NHL. And now with the expansion draft coming up and with the entry draft coming up and all kinds of free agency stuff going on, you know you're going to want to stay tuned to Locked On NHL, and they are available wherever you get your podcast, just like we are. And we've got a lot to talk about. We are going to do a two-parter today because there's just so much that came out of the Friday and Saturday news in Montreal Canadiens land with the exit interviews and all of that. So what we're going to do is we are going to talk about Joe Bouchard, and we're going to talk about options, and that's going to come up in tomorrow's episode. Today, we're going to talk about Marc Bergevin's comments, what to do with Philippe Danault, Corey Perry, and also Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And that's today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Bouchard. We're going to talk about who could possibly replace him. And we're going to get into the to-do list that Marc Bergevin now finds himself having to deal with now that the long playoff run is over. He's got a very short amount of time to do a lot of things. And in order to do that, I'm one of your hosts. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. And I'm joined, as always, by Scott Matla of Habs Eyes on the Prize. Normally, the draft is it's the meat of the year for Scott, but we've had such a long playoff run that, Scott, are you even in draft mode yet?
No. Which is unfortunate because I'm making our pick in the Locked On mock draft as well. My brain has mostly still been resetting after the playoff run is over. I've started a draft profile and it's been sitting half finished for about 3 days now. My brain is not quite ready to get to playoff hockey yet, or draft mode hockey yet.
And if we ourselves are not able to even think about who the Montreal Canadiens are going to draft in the entry draft, I can't even imagine what Marc Bergevin's very, very long to-do list looks like right now. There's so much to do, and we are going to talk about what's left for him to do between now and, let's say, free agency. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Today, what we're going to address is some comments that Marc Bergevin made in his end-of-year media availability that has everybody buzzing. And he said, I have 1 year left on my contract and I'm going to honor that. And that made everybody wonder, does that mean he wants to leave? And throughout that interview, he did make references to this being a tough year on him mentally. And he had, there were doubts and he feels burnt out. And there's been quite some discussion about that. And so I feel like we sort of not panicked. I don't think you can call it panic, because I do think that it is something that he has been here. Like at the end of his contract, he'll have been here for 10 years. He'll have been the GM of the Montreal Canadiens for 10 years. This isn't a small hockey market where nobody cares what you're doing. This is a market where if you get the job wrong, you're going to hear about it from all sides. You're not going to be able to turn on the radio driving into work. You're not going to be able to turn on the television. You're not going to be able to listen to the local news. Everything is going to be about how you are messing up your job. So I understand that there's a lot of pressure. And he said that this year in particular was a very, very hard year. So I guess, Scott, let's start with, do we think that maybe he's just really tired and maybe if he has like a couple of weeks of rest, maybe he'll feel differently?
I think part of it is he's probably tired. He's probably exhausted at this point. And there's something that was in Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts, but one source warned to be careful. He said Bergevin was burnt out and may not want to return after his contract is up. At the very least, today's comments are some confirmation of that. Staying another season gives everyone time to breathe, but it's not like the white-hot spotlight of Montreal is going to decrease. I do wonder if Bergevin and Molson discuss a new front office structure where Bergevin moves up to a president of hockey ops type role, and either Scott Mellenby or Martin Lapointe becomes the next GM. The biggest thing I think is that Marc Bergevin, we've seen it. He's looked a lot more tired. It looks like the last 18 months to 2 years have taken a toll on the guy. It's very early to see. It's, they're coming off the playoff run. They're coming off of a whole bunch of things. I'm not shocked that maybe Marc Bergevin is a teeny bit tired right now, and he's got a busy couple of weeks ahead of him. But at the same time, we've been yelling about getting a president of hockey ops for the longest time that, you know what? It might not be the worst thing in the world. And I hope that, he's able to get some time to kind of recover and recuperate a little bit. But I can't say that I'm shocked that Marc Bergevin might be a little burnt out. He's been here almost a decade and will be here a decade, assuming he doesn't get fired before the season starts. It is a lot for one person. And I am not surprised that that his wording was the way that it was, and that some of the reports that have come out are what they are.
And we've been saying this, and we've actually had listeners, send us tweets or emails about this as well, is that something that the Canadiens could very well do is have a president of hockey operations. And at the time, the way that we envisioned it was we thought that, they should get a president of hockey operations. So a lot of that burden is lifted off Marc Bergevin, and he can stick to the cap and the re-signing and all of that. And it kind of makes sense now that he's done this for such a long time. And I don't care what people say, he has finally had success. Success is not always a championship. Success is going deep into the playoffs, especially when you think about how hard it is to get there. Like, I think he's had a year of success. I think that obviously in his mind, he would have loved to win the Stanley Cup, but who doesn't want to win the Stanley Cup? I think that's just, he's finally seen his vision play out, and the Canadiens did come up short, but I would argue that anybody would have come up short against that Tampa team. And I'm not just saying this as a Montreal Canadiens fan. I have a hard time imagining a team that would not be beaten by Tampa, even if they're much better than the Canadiens, even if they matched Tampa better, even if they got the series to 7 games, all of that. So I do think that now that he's seen some of that and that taste, that maybe he still wants to be involved with the Canadiens, but having that day-to-day pressure of making those specific decisions might be something that he doesn't want. And it's something that we talked about earlier, a couple of weeks ago, actually. This guy loves his players. He loves this team. He loves these guys. Like, he absolutely adores this team, and we're going to get into it a little bit later, but they all love each other too. So I feel like he would still want to be involved. He would still want to be part of the team. So I think that if maybe Molson were to negotiate with him, you move to president of hockey operations role, which is still being involved, or maybe he's just so tired that he wants to go away. Maybe he wants to become a scout again. It's up to him at this point, because right now that he's done this and he's managed to get this team to the final, his negotiating position is a little bit stronger. And he's also shown that maybe he can be involved with success. And so, having somebody else be the bottom line might be what the doctor ordered, essentially. And so we don't have to freak out or anything like that. I think there's still a year left for Jeff Molson to find out who comes next. And it could very well be Marc Bergevin. And, for all our criticisms of him and for all our differences that we've had, you can't argue with what's on paper when you're the owner of a team trying to make a decision. So, the other option too is that the other question too is that who would be the general manager of the team, right? Like, now they've got a year to think about what they want. They've got a year to think about who's going to be available or who they want to poach if possible. And so it's really just a matter of maybe the dust settles, right? Like, we see what happens maybe in the middle of this year. Maybe Marc Bergevin changes his mind, or maybe Jeff Bolson has a lot of LinkedIn profiles to look at. In the meantime, we're going to talk about another major part of this team's success, and that is Philippe Danault, and that's going to happen in just one moment. But first, remember, Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. It is delicious. It gives you energy. It is high in protein, low in sugar. It is made with real chocolate, and it is delicious. We love Built Bar. We are fueled by Built Bar. This entire playoff run was fueled by Built Bar, really, at least on the Locked On podcast end. And like we said, we use it like for hiking, as a snack, as a treat. I use it as an on-the-go breakfast sometimes. You just don't feel like eating, but you're going to get lightheaded if you don't. You just have a Built Bar. It's very, very satisfying, and it is a treat. And they've got 18 delicious flavors to choose from. What we recommend you do is you get a mixed box and find the one you like out of all of them. For me, it is salted caramel. For Scott, it is the German chocolate. And we just, we get so much use out of them. And if you want to try Built Bar, you can go to builtbar.com and enter promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's builtbar.com and enter promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
All right. So, Scott, I don't think anyone in this market will disagree if we say that Philippe Danault is the target UFA for this Montreal Canadiens team in this offseason.
Yeah, for everyone on this team, because we know Thomas Tatar's not coming back, and they're gonna get Kotkaniemi. They're probably gonna re-sign one of Armia or Lehkonen, and that's an entirely different story. But this team, with or without Philippe Danault, is a very different thing. We talked a lot about how Marc Bergevin has a huge kind of task list in front of him, and chief among them is getting Philippe Danault re-signed. That is probably right at the top of his free agency pile. He's obviously got the draft coming up and the expansion draft, but I look at his pile of who's coming back, and you have Danault is at the top, and then it's probably Kotkaniemi's RFA contract, and then it's, Lehkonen, Armia, Corey Perry, and we will touch on Corey Perry and Kotkaniemi a little bit later. But the way Danault played in the postseason kind of forces Bergevin's hand here. Apparently, they were apart by about $500,000 to $750,000 in their initial negotiations. And Danault, in his locker cleanout, mentions how those negotiations getting leaked out kind of hurt him this season, made it hard to focus. That's why he wasn't able to get his offensive game going. And he was a little bit afraid of just losing his spot with how good Kotkaniemi and Suzuki were. And then in the playoffs, he just turned into an elite shutdown center. And I think with a new contract in hand, he might be able to kind of relax a little bit more. Getting him back in the organization and back in the fold is a crucial thing, because without him, you have a large gap to fill down the middle. I like Jake Evans. I like Ryan Poehling. I love Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, but it is very difficult to find someone who took up those defensive minutes like Danault did in the playoffs. There are charts and numbers and everything. The amount of defensive work he did is astronomical, almost irreplaceable in some circumstances. So the Canadiens have to be very careful with what they choose to do here, and letting Danault walk, I think, is not an option. They have to get this done one way or the other. It's going to cost them too much in the long run if they let Danault go for nothing.
I absolutely agree with you. And this is the thing, like this year, we mentioned this before recording, but I'm just going to say again, I got a lot out of the media availabilities of this year, more than any other end of season media availability, to be honest. I think because there was so much to ask the players about, and because the players had just been through this massive experience and they were really raw, there was a lot of emotion involved and there was a lot of thoughtfulness. And I really liked, it was Eric Stahl specifically who said that Philippe Danault is the kind of player you win championships with. And he talked a lot about that. And Eric Stahl, I mean, we're not expecting Eric Stahl to be back. He doesn't even know if he still wants to play in the NHL, but it's pretty obvious that he was a rental, right? And he said that, and he said that about, he said that he reminded him of his brother Jordan Stahl, who is a phenomenal player, who was also, he played a similar role on those Penguins teams that were not, they won one cup, but they went pretty far in the playoffs multiple times with those Penguin teams. He was behind Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. Like, when you're the third line center of a team, it doesn't mean that you can't be elite. And I think that that's kind of what has become apparent with Philippe Danault, is that this is a good role for him, is that you've got your, not quote unquote the third line. It just means that you've got to have a top nine that really does it all. And it doesn't always have to be like a flashy or superstar kind of center, but you have to be really, really good. And there are a couple of things that Philippe Danault said in his availability, particularly, that I think is crucial here, is that it's like, Scott, you touched on, what he cared about more than money was the role, because he saw the emergence in the bubble of Kotkaniemi and Nick Suzuki. And when they came back after all of that, and they saw that, the Canadiens were serious about success, and they had all these changes, and they were finally taking those steps and spending to the cap and taking those risks, he wondered where his role was going to be. And he put a lot of pressure on himself to produce offensively. And then the contract negotiations getting leaked and all of that, like, it really mentally proved more challenging than he expected. But he said himself that he realized that he has a lot of value, the kind of value that he would have to a team. And I think that was a message to Marc Bergevin, is that, I realize the value I have to a team means, like, because I'm valuable here, now everybody can see that I'm valuable anywhere. And, unfortunately for Chicago, they didn't see his value at the time, but Montreal did. And I don't think even Montreal expected him to be this good at what he does. And he's definitely the kind of player where it seemed like he was constantly saying in the in the media availabilities throughout the playoffs, is that he kept saying chacun a son rôle, like everyone has their role. And then he kept saying, like, everybody understands their role. And so I think specifically he was saying that because he himself, like, it was kind of like a light bulb went off, and he really thrived. And he said he was very proud of the way that he overcame the challenge. And I think that confidence that he has, and the fact that he said that he's like, I'm not worried about my role anymore because now I have value to a team. Like, that's a message. Like, that's a message to the front office. It's like, I know what I'm worth and I know what I want to do on this team. It's not necessarily about money for him, and like you said, maybe in the beginning of the season when he wasn't doing that well, it's $500,000 apart. Like, maybe now it's going to be more like $1.5 million apart. But really, if you're the Canadiens, you don't want him going to another team that would die to have a guy like him. And there are so many teams that would, like teams that are ready to take the next step. Like, Philippe Danault is going to be on their to-do list, or on their wish list. And so if you're the Canadiens, you can't let him go, because you're not going to find another one like him. You've already got one. You really, you have to do what it takes with the cap gymnastics to bring him on. And maybe if you're Marc Bergevin, you're smart and you say, let's see who Seattle takes so that I'll know how much more money I can offer you. And if not, I'll have to make some moves. But you tell him that you want him back and you're going to move some stuff around. It's just, just hang on for a couple minutes until we figure this out. We're going to get this done, because if you're the Canadiens and you let him walk, like, that is just, it's idiotic. I'm sorry. It's a way to fail. So having said that, there are some other guys whose futures on the Montreal Canadiens we kind of want to talk about based on what happened throughout the season and their media availability. And that's coming up in just one moment. But first, BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing and you can track all the action at BetOnline. Get all the latest news, odds, and info for all your sporting needs, including MLB, NBA, NHL, and all your UFC, MMA action. Before the next pitch, Head over to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website, betonline.ag, or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code LOCKEDON. That's betonline.ag, or you can use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
So we talked about how Philippe Danault is a no-brainer for the Montreal Canadiens, and right now I kind of want to talk about like what I'm trying to remember the people whose media availabilities had the most impact on me on Friday and Saturday. I watched them all through Friday and Saturday as well, because I really wanted to get at the meaning. Most of the time, like canned quotes, like they don't have a lot of meaning, but I feel like this time around there was a lot of revealing information that was said, and I think let's spend a little bit of time on Corey Perry first and then move on to Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So Corey Perry, in his media availability, was very emotional, and he said that he knew that there was hockey left in him, so that's crucial. He does want to come back for, I guess, at least one season, and he said that he would like to be part of the Montreal Canadiens. He specifically said when he was asked, did you discuss this with Marc Bergevin in your exit interview or whatever? And he said, I expressed the desire to come back, but in terms of hammering things out, no, that's too soon for that. So he's expressed to the Canadiens that he would like to be back. He has said so many times this season how much he loves being part of this group. And he talked about how it was his childhood team. He said it when he first signed, and he said it in his end of season media availability. He said that it's meant a lot to him to play for a Canadian team, which for me is a warning sign. It's like, don't let any other Canadian teams get him. And he said that he has a lot of hockey left in him, and he would like to come back. And they asked him about a comparison with Spezza, and he said that, that'll work itself out. And I believe Spezza is currently making $1 million per, and he signed for 2 years in Toronto. Is that?
No, Spezza's back on a $750,000 deal. He's taking basically league min to stay with the Leafs. Wayne Simmons signed for just about $900K a year, give or take, I think was the other one they just signed. And I had this discussion with a few people. I assume that's what Corey Perry is coming back on. I don't think Marc Bergevin's going to look at him and go, you're going to get more than $1 million, because for 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023, Corey Perry is still being paid $2 million by the Anaheim Ducks. I don't think it's...
I thought that was done.
No, he has 2 more years left of that, like he did this year and last year. So him signing at like $800,000 again is a very real possibility. And assuming they use him in a similar role, fourth line forward, maybe some power play time, leverage situations where you need a seasoned vet. Corey Perry makes all the sense in the world, because people forget he grew up a Canadiens fan. His media availability was very emotional in that he wants to be here. He wants to experience the full crowd and all that. Like, I can imagine the Bell Center losing their mind during player intros when he's introduced. I think out of everyone, he's the safest bet out of anyone that Marc Bergevin traded for or signed, outside of like the guys who are signed long-term. So the Joel Edmondson, the Josh Andersons, etc. I wouldn't be shocked if Perry has a new contract in hand in the relative near future, where Bergevin picks up the phone and goes, hey, year, $850,000, whatever. And they go, yep. And it's done. Like, it just makes sense at this point for the team and for the player.
Yeah, like Corey Perry doesn't need the money. He's had a lot of success in his life and he's made a lot of money. And like we said, he's still being paid by Anaheim. I think he wants the experience. I think he really enjoyed it, and he kept saying over and over again how much he would like to see the Bell Center full. He said, he was apart from his family for this half a year. Obviously, it didn't make sense to pull his kid out of school and all of that. And he said that he would like to experience it with his family, like have them be part of it too. Like he seems very, very set on coming back, and I cannot believe I'm saying this after how much I protested over the course of the season and even before. Like, I am all about Corey Perry, Montreal Canadiens legend now. And I think the other thing too is that we have to think about it is that Marc Bergevin preaches culture, preaches character, preaches all kinds of stuff, and it means different things to different people. Like for us, we're maybe our definition of culture and character is not exactly the same as Marc Bergevin's, and in fact sometimes we fully disagree with it. But I do think that he's the kind of guy that's like, oh, Corey Perry had a great effect on the young guys this year. I think I want that around. Like I feel like that's the way that he would look at it. And he gets, like, as we said before, Marc Bergevin gets so emotional over these players that like this guy is a guy that he would love to, like, keep in the fold. As for Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I thought there were a couple of really revealing things about the media availability, is not just what he said and what he was asked about, but also during Dominique Ducharme's, he was asked about Kotkaniemi. He said that, like, I don't know how the media knows this, were they like sitting in front of the door and watching this, like as they were, doing the media availability or not, but they said that like the exit interview with Kotkaniemi took quite some time, or longer than usual, and they asked him about it. And they also asked, I believe it was Eric Stahl that they asked about Kotkaniemi, if I'm not mistaken, in Kotkaniemi's future. And they asked Kotkaniemi himself. And so I think there is this view around the team that Kotkaniemi is not fully formed yet as a player. Like, they think that he still needs to be molded. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that, I feel like babying Kotkaniemi at this point, it is his third season in the league, is probably not the best idea, but I don't think that that's what the team has meant by saying that he's still developing. I think that there is a specific thing that they want from him, and he has yet to show it, and we can't see it. But I think, like, I get that there's a plan in place, and he himself, like, this is what I like about him, his, like, the attitude, because they asked him, like, point blank, they asked him, like, you played with everybody this year, you played on I don't know how many different line combinations this year, do you think that affected your game? And he said that it was challenging for sure, but then he made it into a positive himself by saying, and then the playoffs came around and I felt ready to play with anybody, or something along those lines. I was like, I could play with anybody, or I felt ready to play. Anyway, he seems to have phrased it in a positive way for his own development. And somebody said that he's still growing, and I can't remember who it was. And I just, like, kind of imagine that, like, how much bigger is this kid going to get, but he is a kid, like he's still growing. And to me, I think part of it is that they told him what he needs to do in the off season. And he said there's a lot of focus on his skating. So I think that that's part of it. And a lot of people said that, a lot of the other players that were asked about said that, he's going to be great. He's going to be great. He needs to mature a little bit. So, I mean, we don't see what's going on behind the scenes, but I feel like, he's 20 years old. He's not even 21 yet. And the maturing aspect of it, I totally see it. So I wonder if it's just, instead of babying it, like, they look at him as older than he is, and they're expecting him to play like somebody who's been around a lot longer. I don't know.
For me, he mentioned that he knows where his deficiencies were. He talked about wanting to improve his edge work and his skating still. He says he had some good work on it to start in the offseason, and he wants to continue to improve on that. He's very aware of who he is as a player, and I think it was tough because you're going to feel the sting a little bit. You were a healthy scratch in game 4 and 5 when the playoffs came to an end. You were a healthy scratch to start the playoffs, which can't be good or can't be easy on a young brain like that. It's a huge mental thing, and then you're bouncing around the lineup and this and that. One of the biggest things, Danault coming back is huge, but I think next year we know where Nick Suzuki fits in this lineup, and we know where Philip Danault fits. They got to find line mate fits for Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Like Suzuki and Caulfield works. Dano and Gallagher works with whoever you want to put on that line. Lehkonen, Byron, whomever, it works. Trying to figure out where Jesperi Kotkaniemi fits and what wingers he needs is one of their biggest things. They need to get someone in here who looks at the way they play and the kind of style they are and figure that out. And I think they will once they finish hiring people, and we'll touch on that in tomorrow's episode. But the interesting part is now is Kotkaniemi is up for a contract. He just turned 21 years old and he's already played 3 NHL seasons. He's still so young that I'm hoping what they do is they don't just kind of do a short-term deal. I hope they go, 4 or 5 years and try to get something hammered out, because I think he's going to explode over that time frame. He's right on that cusp. We've seen it with Suzuki that he was almost there and then it clicked. We're right on the cusp of that, I think, with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And I am really hoping that in the next season, he's someone that they go, yeah, he's got it now. And then it just works. I don't know what his ceiling is or what his ceiling will be, but you can see with some of the plays that he makes and the vision he has, it is so very, very close to being the complete package right now.
And I think that's something that you just mentioned. I think that there's quite a bit of him not knowing yet what is expected of him, simply because they aren't sure specifically what they want from him. So when I said earlier in this segment, I said there's something that they're looking for him that he doesn't have yet. I don't mean specifically the role. I feel like they have an idea of what they want from him. And then if he attains that, then they know where to slot him in. And in the meantime, they're not sure. That's what it feels like. And all of the players, every single one of them said that part of their success that they had in the postseason is that everybody understood what they needed to do and everybody executed it well. So I feel like that's a big part of coaching, and that's a big part of a successful team, is that, you can have all the talented guys in the world and you can have a strategy, but if you don't communicate well what's expected of every player, then really you're kind of floundering. And we did see that in the regular season, right? Like so many players just didn't look like they knew where they were supposed to be or what they were supposed to be doing. And then if like the switch flipped in the postseason, and I feel like that is a massive, massive thing, because players are talented and players are smart, like guys like Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, they make it look instinctual, but sometimes like as a team, like you need proper communication as to what everyone is expected to do, if only to avoid, sort of making mistakes and to avoid a lot of what we saw in the regular season, which was 2 guys covering 1 man and leaving another guy open, and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like it's very, very important to communicate well, and that's going to be a big part of Kotkaniemi's development going forward. But in the meantime, speaking of development, Joel Bouchard has flown the coop, and we're going to talk about that in tomorrow's episode. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Canadians. You can email us at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. Send us all your questions and topic ideas. We're going to be on throughout the off season, not just all the way to free agency, but past that, we might go down to 3 days a week, but we will still be producing content, and we've got some ideas for some fun interviews. But send us what you want to hear about, send us what you want us to talk about, and we will do that. In the meantime, if you like this podcast, please subscribe to Locked On Today wherever you get your podcasts. It's where you get more of your sports news in less time every day. It's available on the Odyssey app, or like we said, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in tomorrow. Go Habs, go.
Giannis doesn't let Milwaukee go gently into that good night. Here's what our local experts are locked on today. The Milwaukee Bucks blow out the Phoenix Suns in Game 3 of the NBA Finals on the back of a second consecutive 40-10 performance from Giannis Antetokounmpo. Final score 120-100. Today on Locked On Bucks, our local expert Kane Pittman discusses the growing legend of Giannis, Jrue Holiday's X-Factor performance, and Devin Booker's struggles. A lot of baseball to pay attention to. The MLB draft began on Sunday. Monday night, the MLB's All-Star ceremonies begin with the Home Run Derby. Get up to speed on everything by subscribing to the Locked On MLB podcast today. Back to the NBA Finals. Should the Phoenix Suns be worried? The answer is on the Locked On Today podcast. All the sports news you need in under 20 minutes. Follow Locked On Today, wherever you get podcasts. Local experts on the biggest stories. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.